Hello, welcome to this training on building informative and interactive dashboards with xyzt.ai. My name is Bart, I'm CTO at xyzt.ai, and I will take you through different aspects today about dashboarding. So here on the right side, you see an example of a dashboard that was built using xyzt.ai and floating vehicle data. I will be using this data in this tutorial, but what I'll be explaining and telling applies to any sort of data, also in the maritime domain or other IoT use cases. So I'll start with why dashboarding, and then I'll go into how to create widgets in the platform, how to optimize the layout, how to make sure that if you create widgets, that you use consistent scaling so that you are able to compare widgets and see change in a proper way. I will also show you how to add additional information, which is important on dashboards because you want to provide additional context, additional explanation to the story that you are telling. And for this, I will also show you how you can include external content, such as widgets provided by other platforms. I will also talk about how to modify an already created widget, which is a very common use case. You created something and then afterwards you still wanted to tweak something or to change something. And that is, of course, possible. And then finally, I will also go into how to share your dashboards and also how to configure access to the dashboard, because there are a couple options in the platform for you to explore. And finally, dashboards are only useful if they can find their way to the audience, and that often means that you need to embed them in your own website or your own portal or your own application, and I will show you how to do that as well. So let's start before I dive into the platform with why dashboarding. Well, there's many different reasons why you should consider dashboarding in your projects. And the first one is a dashboard is a really good way to summarize your analysis. So it provides overview. And as you know, it's important to first provide the overview and then only go into the details. Second, dashboards are the new way to do reporting. While before people used to create PDFs, Word documents, even printed documents to create a report, increasingly we see that our users are creating dynamic reports, which are online and accessible through the internet, and a dashboard is a perfect way to do so. Dashboards also allow you to build views on data, views on situations that can be updated. And this is in contrast to a static report. You can start using dashboards to monitor. For instance, you can monitor whether it's busy or it's not busy, whether the roads are congested or not, and maybe even also whether there's an increase or a decrease compared to another time period. Finally, dashboards also allow you to collaborate with multiple stakeholders, with multiple people. You can give access to users outside of the platform, which is extremely useful to make sure that, for instance, the press or the politics get involved in your findings. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to drive action and to implement change, implement improvement from the insights that you communicated through your dashboard. So let me dive into the platform and explain you first where you can find the dashboards and where you can find the functionality to create the widgets. So for this, let me put this in full screen so I have as much real estate as possible. So I'll do that here. So I'm in my demo account now, and I have a couple of projects prepared. For instance, I have this project here, which is a project with just a couple of layers and some data. On the map, you see a density map of maritime traffic. On the right side here, you see different layers. So there's a background layer that I can toggle on and off. There's a timeline at the bottom you're all familiar with. In this case, it shows the number of vessels over time that I'm looking at. And here on the right side, you see summaries on those vessels, like what's the distribution of different types of vessels, or for instance, the speed of the vessels. And as you know, this is all configurable, and you can use it to do your deep analysis. But also, the different analytical pages like this one, which is called the visual analytics, allow you to create a dashboard. And in fact, there's always, if you go to your active project, there's always one dashboard available in a project. If you need to create multiple dashboards for the same data, but maybe telling a different story, a different analysis, you just have to create multiple projects. And that's very easy to be done. You can just hit the clone button to create a second project. So the dashboard is here. If I click on the dashboard button, I can also do that here on the left, click on the dashboard button. And you see initially it's empty. And what I will be showing is exactly what it mentions here at the top, is that you can create dashboards or widgets on a dashboard by right-clicking on the map, the timeline, and any other widget in the platform. And this is true for all the different analytical pages. So for instance, if I go back to my visual analytics page, and if you look at the map, I can right-click on the map, bring up a context menu, and I can just do add as widget. And this is how you create on every place in the platform a widget. So it's a little bit different, I think, from the other BI platforms, where it works more like you start with nothing and you work towards something. While with the XYZT platform, you start with already something and then you configure that in a way that you like to create a widget. So for instance, configuring can mean that you zoom in on a certain area, or you change some of the styling. So for instance, instead of plotting the number of records, I could decide to plot the ship types, and then I could put that on a dashboard. So let me just show you how to put a density map like this on a dashboard. So you right click on the map, you choose add as widget, and you get basically 3 text fields to fill in, and 2 are required: the title, so density traffic in the North Sea. You can modify the title afterwards still if you like. And you have to place it also in a group, and you can have multiple groups on a dashboard. So let me just give it a name, demo group. You can also add an additional description. I won't do that now. I will show you how to do that later. So this is how you put a widget on the dashboard, and here on the bottom side, you see a notification that it was successful. If I would go to the dashboard, here on the left, you see the widget is there. It has a certain dimension, a certain width and height, and that is what the platform chooses by default. If you want to change the dimensions, you can just hit those 3 buttons here, those 3 dots here, and then you select Edit, and then you can make it, for instance, full width and maybe a little bit higher. So it updates like that. So you see, this is my first widget on the dashboard. And this is just the beginning. So from this point on, you can start configuring, adding some additional information, adding some more widgets. But this is really the basics. So you go to your analytical page where you do your analysis, you configure what you want to put on the dashboard, and then you put it on the dashboard. In addition here, what I can do is I can fill in the description that I forgot to fill in. So here I can, for instance, give some additional information on the data sets, because keep in mind, if you share the dashboard with people that were not involved in the analysis, that don't know about the data, you should explain what you are showing on your widgets. So let me just fill something in here quickly to show you what it will look like. So this shows density of vessel traffic through the North Sea. You can use basic HTML in those fields. I won't do it now. I will give another example. which makes that you can increase the font size, you can make text bold or italic, and so on. You see now here at the bottom, there's this little description now with this widget that gives you information on what is going on. So let me show you a couple more examples of adding widgets. I can do that, for instance, by going back to the Visual Analytics page. And for instance, say that I want to add one of those widgets on the dashboard. So for instance, let me say that I'm interested in the distribution of the draft and I want to report on that in my dashboard. I can just hit here the three dots, or I can right click on this chart and just to add as widget. Now you see that the widget is not styled. It's just plain the dark gray. If I wanted to make it styled in a certain color gradient, I can do that as well. And the way to do that is you select here that draft property and you select your color map here that you want to apply. I'll just leave it with the rainbow one. You also select maybe the scale of the color map. So for instance, change the color gradient a bit to map between 0 and 10 to the color map. And you see the exact same colors on the map, which is very easy for an analyst to then sort of qualify what is going on the map and in the distribution. And if I then add this as a widget in the same group, so for example, distribution of drafts, you will see that it keeps using that color here on this widget. And similarly to before, I can just change the size of those widgets like this, and they will update. So this is a way to put all those different widgets on the dashboard. And of course, you want to work with the layout as well. The dashboard by itself uses a grid system, and that is very common for web-based user interfaces, is that you define a widget to take a certain number of grid cells. And there are in total 12 grid cells horizontally. So you will see that this one, if I open the edit here, you see it's configured to 5. And if I would put it to 6, it's going to take up half of my dashboard width. So this is a way to sort of position your different widgets nicely together. In the platform, there are many examples of dashboards. So you just go to the sample projects. And for instance, you hit one of the examples, and then you get a feeling of what is possible with all the different dashboard capabilities. So for instance, here you see a dashboard that was created with some sample data from INRIX. It's floating car data. You see an image here to give some context. You see a before and after analysis, some explanation about that. And you see here at the bottom a dwell time chart before and a dwell time chart after. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this data and show you how to configure the dashboard like that. There are a couple of things that I want to add to what I've already explained, so that you know all the different capabilities. So for that, I prepared this project here. It's a project that was empty, but I added the exact same data set. And you see, if I open it here on the Visual Analytics page, I already set some filters. So in this case, we're analyzing traffic that comes from this area, exit 14 here in the south, and that goes to exit 13 in the north. And the reason why I'm using this example is that it's a really nice before-after example. The situation before is that most traffic coming from this area stays on the highway when it goes to this area. And the situation after is that traffic is diverted because the highway is closed. And you see also on the map, on the underlying map, you see that there's construction going on in this area. So this is a very nice example to build a dashboard with a report before, after what is happening. Before going into the different steps in creating the dashboard, I want to go in a first poll. And the poll goes as follows. do you already use dashboarding in xyzt.ai? The first option is yes for reporting towards external stakeholders. Second option is yes for saving my analysis results. Third option is no, but I use another dashboarding tool. And the fourth option is no, I never created a dashboard before. Um, if it's none of those four, you can just leave something in the chat if you like. Otherwise, you can just skip the poll. So I'll wait a couple more seconds for people to answer. Okay, so now that we've went through the poll, let me go to my dashboard in this project, and you see it's empty. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna build up a dashboard that does this before after analysis, and that compares, for instance, the amount of traffic, but also how people move during the traffic diversion compared to before. So the way to go is I just go back to my analysis, and as you see, I already have my traffic flow filter. So what I'm first gonna do is I'm gonna add a map with the traffic before. If I don't want the legend, I can just disable it. And if I then, for example, say add as widget, the legend will not appear. If I do want the legend, I can just keep it there, and it will appear also on the widget. In this case, I want the background to be a little bit darker, so that the foreground data pops up a little bit better. So I configure it like this. I zoom in a little bit, and then I do add as widget. And I just call the group bridge. Let's call it traffic. And the title of the widget, I just call it before to be quick. If I go to my dashboard, you will see the widget is there and the legend is there because I kept it there. Now, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the exact same configuration, but instead of looking at the 2 weeks before, I'm going to look at the 2 weeks after. And I'm going to add that as well as a widget. So I'm going to add it to the same group situation. I'll just call it after because I called the other one before. And you see it will put the second one in exact same configuration, so you can start comparing those two density maps next to each other. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use one of the other analytics, and I'm going to analyze how long people have to basically wait in those two areas. So before, people would probably just be driving and they could just drive fluently from south to north. But afterwards, probably my assumption is, and I can already see that also if I would zoom in here on this area and I would plot it with speed, and you see the speed is between 0 and almost 400. So I'll put it between 0 and 120. You see it's predominantly blue. So this means in this color map, it is slow traffic. In this case, slow traffic for me is bad. So I'm going to swap the color map from red to blue. And you see, okay, there's a lot of congested traffic in this area. If I would go to the situation before, you see on the highway itself, it's now blue, which is fast traffic. It's only on the exits that there is slower traffic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to analyze, okay, how long do people wait or queue in this area? And for that, we have a dedicated page, which is called the dwell time analytics. And you see it's sort of pre-configured already with different exits on that highway system. And it's also pre-configured with 2 periods. So I configured it with the first 2 weeks. That's my first period. And in the second period, I configured it with the last 2 weeks in the data. So I'm actually taking those 2 weeks. Now I can put this on the dashboard just as is. I'm just going to focus on exit 13 and 14 because those are the exits that basically are affected by the congested area. So it should be computing that now, and there you go. So you see before, people would only spend like a couple seconds, 20 seconds most. Keep in mind, this is all traffic in those areas. So, and afterwards you see people spend a lot more time. I can put this on the dashboard just by clicking add as widget. I put it to the same group, and I call it dwell time. If I go to my dashboard, you see that by default, it takes up the whole width of my dashboard, which is actually what I wanted. So that is nice. Now I see the before on the left and the after on the right, and I get to see really nicely the two charts. Also note that those two charts, they're in the same scale vertically, which means that we can compare them. And this is something that I want to highlight, because it's not always the case when you start building a dashboard that by itself or by default, those comparison charts are the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my trend analytics. And this one, it does something different. It basically looks at, again, those different areas, which are the different exits on the highway system, which I'm going to, again, restrict to just 13 and 14. And it looks at the number of trips or the number of vehicles by hour of day. And if I look at the time range, it is now configured for the first 2 weeks. So after the start of the data and then 14 days further. So if I would put this on the dashboard, I can do that in the same group. And I just call it number of trips. If I would do that then also with the last 2 weeks, which I have to configure differently, I have to basically do it in the reverse order. Basically, I have to put this at 14 and this at 0. You see different trend already. So let me add this as well. And I call this after. I will have to change probably the naming on the other one. So let me edit this one, because I just called it number of trips. I'll just call it now before. You see it's 4 wide and 1 tall. So I will make it 6 and 2, so that it takes up half of the width of my dashboard. And it gives a little bit more space for my chart. I'll do the same here in the after case, and also 2 for this one. And now what you see is that those two charts, you cannot compare them, because the vertical axis is different. You see it goes from 1,000 to 7,000, and it goes from 500 to 3,000. And the reason for this is that by default in the platform, many of the charts have automatic scaling to make sure that the data you're looking at is sufficiently stretched in the area that is available. So I will have to change this. And to do so, I will have to modify my configuration. And this I wanted to show not just for scaling the vertical axis, but I also wanted to do this to show you how to edit a widget after it has been created. So let me click on the widget. If I do that, I get back to the place where I configured the widget. And what I will have to do now is I will have to define the scale on the vertical axis, so that I can set the exact same scale on the other chart. And that is always done here behind the 3 dots. You go to edit, and instead of an automatic vertical scale, you choose a fixed one. Let me just put it at 10,000, which is sufficiently scaled for this data. Now, when I did this, I did not yet update the widget. So when I click on a widget and I start configuring here, this setting is not saved. It's not saved into the widget state. To do that, I have to do add as widget again, but instead of choosing create, I have to choose replace. And replace means that I can basically replace any widget that I have on the dashboard with a new widget. So it's not just restricted to updating a widget. You can just replace it like that. And you see, I chose the wrong widget, so maybe I should have named this before trips, so that I didn't pick the wrong widget in my replacements. You see, I replaced the density map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to the after one and do exactly the same as I did before. I replace the before one and I go back to my dashboard. Oops, my dashboard. And now I have it back. So you see how easy it is to replace. But I was actually wanting to do this one. So the before trips. So I go back to the vertical scale. I set it to fixed 10,000. I do add as widget again. And instead of choosing before, I choose before trips. And I can now go to my dashboard and do the same thing with my second chart here. I click on edit and I choose the exact same scale. You see, I put it to 10,000, even though my chart only takes the lower half of the vertical range. But this makes that if I put those two charts next to each other, and of course I forgot to save my results. So let me do that again. And I do add as widget, replace, and I choose the widgets that I have to, the widget that I want to be replaced. So you see now I have two charts. They are created more or less independently, but they are comparable because they follow the same vertical scale. And this is now highlighting the fact that even though from this chart you see that in those areas the congestion is much higher, there is less traffic. So people seem to be avoiding the area. Now, before going into the final topics of adding external content and also adding basically sharing and embedding dashboards into your own applications or other applications, I have a second poll that I wanted to launch. And the poll is as follows. If we should extend dashboarding, what functionality do you feel we should add? The first one, and this comes, of course, from our backlog of requests. So the first one is a more flexible layout. Instead of having the grid, having more free-form layout, maybe. Second option is more interactivity. For instance, allowing you on the dashboard itself to select different periods, maybe different areas to analyze or to update the dashboard with. The third one is animated widgets, replays on the dashboard. The fourth one, you can imagine that instead of having dashboards, you have templates that you want to be filled in. And the templates are maybe created by you in another tool or in a way that can be reused when you create different dashboards. And then finally, question, but we didn't tackle it yet, password protected shares. We don't have it yet. So you can share the dashboard, but it is through a publicly accessible link. So if you need to protect it through a password, that is not something that we have yet. So let us know what you like. It will help us in guiding the roadmap for the future. So I'll wait for a few more seconds. Okay, thank you all. So back to my dashboard, you see it's a nice dashboard, but it lacks context. It lacks context in the sense that there's no information. We don't know what we're looking at. There's no explanation. And for that, we allow you to add additional widgets that are not necessarily charts from the platform. They can just be widgets with text, with some explanation, with some images, or they can be widgets that show content from externally. And the way to do that is on the dashboard itself. There is a button here at the top right, Add Widget. And that allows you to basically add any HTML content to the dashboard. So for instance, what I could do is I could add an About widget. That's typically what we also like to do in our sample projects. You can make a separate group of it, or you can put it in the same group. I'm going to put it in the same group. And there you can, for instance, say, okay, this dashboard shows the impact of the road closure. The left charts show the situation before for traffic moving from exit 14 to exit 13. The right charts show the situation after the closure. So this already gives some context, and you see if I add it, it will be added as a last widget. It will pick a default size. So typically you would want to change the size of that. Maybe even make it a bit smaller, like 2. And you can, of course, move that to the top. So I'm going to just drag it to the top. And this way you can sort of start building your widgets. You also see that this widget is now lined up after the About. Don't worry about that because I'm going to change the layout still by adding some more widgets. Here in this one, you see I didn't really use HTML, I just used text, but you can use HTML. For instance, you could, if you want to highlight something, you can add bold text. So you see that it's now bold. If you want to change the font size, it's a little bit more involved. You have to use a style. In HTML, you can just use styles like that. So you can say, okay, I want it to be 16 pixels tall. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry, ChatGPT can help you and just do that. And here you can also, because it's HTML, you can reference images as well. Instead of referencing images, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some external content. And typically what people like to do is they like to embed also in this dashboard content from the outside. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to another website. And let me maybe go to a website that has a live stream of the current situation at the bridge. So this is just YouTube, and this is a live stream of the construction work. And typically with live streams and with videos, you can embed them in other websites. So the way to do that here on YouTube is you can click share, and then you can get an embed code. And that embed code is just HTML. So it's an iframe. Iframe stands for internal frame. And that allows you to embed content into other websites. And the dashboard is basically just a website. So I'm going to add a widget and I'm going to call it live stream. Going to just copy paste that iframe content. And I'm going to add it to my same group so I can place it later on there at the top. So I'm going to move it up. I'll just drag it to the top. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. I'll just edit the size. So let me make it maybe 5 wide. And now I have my live stream. If I hit the play button, you will see it will update. But yeah, on the webcam, it's not super visible if there's not a lot of activity. And of course, you can further change the sizing. You can center it using HTML and so on. Also here, if you want to add a little bit more explanation, you can add a description, live stream from YouTube of the rebuilding the bridge. And that explanation will show up here at the bottom. So this is a way to get external content in. And then finally, what I want to show is, okay, now that I built the dashboard, how can I share it and how can I embed it in other platforms? And the way to do that is very similar to what I did on the YouTube platform. You can just hit the share button. So here at the top, you will see the share button. And what we ask you to do is to give your shared link or shareable link a name so that you can later on revisit the link and maybe remove it and you still know why you created the link. So the name that I will be giving here is used during training. If I do that, I get a link. And you see it's a link that is not easy to generate by yourself, so it's not easy to guess. But keep in mind, oops, it's a public link. So I just hit the back button by accident. So this gives me the opportunity to just show you where the link is. And you can find the link here at the project bookmarks. And you see there's a bookmark used during training and then manage links, and this is where the link is. So here you have the embed code, you have the link. I'm just going to copy the link and I'm going to show you what the dashboard would look like to someone else outside of the platform. So I'm just opening the link here and let me maybe get out of the full screen mode so that you can better see what is happening. So here at the top, you see the link. And here on the right side, you just see a little notification from us that it's powered by xyzt.ai. But this is a publicly accessible link. So if I would send it to you, you would be able to access it. This dashboard, as you can see, you can access, but you can even click on those widgets and you can even go in and do some further analysis. If you don't like that, if you don't like that the recipients of your dashboards access the deeper analysis or really start modifying filters and queries and so on, you can prevent that from happening. And the way to do that is actually at the place where I was. So again, project bookmarks, then you find the bookmark with the name when you created the link. You click on manage links and you click on edit. And there you see there's a checkbox, allow user to navigate to the individual analytics pages by clicking on the widgets on the dashboard. If I disable that and I go back to my link, so I copy my link again, go back to my link, I won't be able to click here. Well, I can click, but nothing happens. So this prevents your users, your viewers, to basically access the deep analysis that is possible by the xyzt.ai platform. So that is fully customizable and configurable by you. If you also want to remove the link, you can just delete it here. And people will get a 404, which means that the page is not accessible or does not exist anymore. There are some shortcuts here to put a link on LinkedIn or something if you want, if you like to do that. What I'm also going to show you is that you can really embed the XYZT platform in any other tool. So we don't restrict against that. So for instance, I'm going to use my dashboard here that I created, and I'm going to embed it in, for instance, in Confluence, which is a wiki tool that we use here at xyzt.ai. For that, I'm going to create a different link so that I later on know that if I remove the link, it's used for that. So I create another link, I copy it, and then I go to my Confluence page that I'm editing. So Confluence is just like a wiki. It's a tool to create documents, to edit documents. So this is not the xyzt.ai platform anymore. But you can imagine it could also be Power BI or any other tool where you want to add some content from xyzt.ai. You see, I asked ChatGPT to create a little blog post about this bridge that was demolished. I'm going to edit it. and I'm going to add some information. So you see here it talks about the transportation network. So this feels like a good place to put my dashboard. So here in this tool, I can just add an iframe, which is an internal frame, which is used, as I explained also for the YouTube video, to place another website into another place. And here I can just use the URL from the XYZT platform. So this is just, if I go to the beginning, you see it's just that URL. And then you have a lot of configuration. I'm just going to put it to 100% width and 600 pixels tall. And you see that it updates automatically. I'm going to disable the frame border. And now I have my dashboard inside. And you see it is all there inside this tool. And I can update it, go out of the edit mode, and this is what it will look like. If you just want to include a map or just another widget, you just make a dashboard with a map, or you just make a dashboard with a widget. Another way to do it is, instead of sharing and embedding a dashboard, you can also share and embed any of the analytical pages. So for instance, if I would go to the visual analytics and I would configure it the way that I like, I can disable all the other elements on the page, have it like this, and then I could, for instance, create a shared link, shared conference as well, and embed that into my page. So instead of having my dashboard here, I can now go in and edit and maybe replace my dashboard with only the map. So I hit the edit button here and I replace my link. If I do that, you will see it will update and it will only show you the map there. So that is also possible. It doesn't have to be the dashboard. It doesn't have to be, yeah, a specific configuration. So you can choose really what to embed into other places. You see it's fully interactive. So it's not just an image. It's really an embed of the XYZT platform into any document, any website that you want to use. And to conclude, the really nice thing is you can even embed the XYZT platform into itself. And this is a bit meta, but I'll show it anyway that it's possible. So what I can do here is, and I have to do it on my original dashboard. So let me go back to my dashboard here. You can embed even on the dashboard of xyzt.ai, you can embed a shared link from maybe another project or the same project. For instance, I could just embed the link that I created. So if I go back to my link, you see I shared it for Confluence, but let me just go to the link. I'll just take the embed code. If I go to my dashboard and I just add this one, so embedding self, I'll just make a new group for that, demo group 2. And you will see now at the bottom, I have embedded actually a page of the XYZT platform into a dashboard of the XYZT platform. And what you will also see is that this page is fully functional. So you can really make interactive widgets like that. So for instance, I could really go in and start playing with this within the dashboard. I know this is a bit meta, but I thought this is pretty cool to end with. And it shows you the power and the capabilities of the dashboarding in the XYZT platform. What I did today is I showed everything through the UI by clicking. There is a REST API. There is an API as well to script this. And by scripting, I mean you can code in Python or in TypeScript or in Java or whatever you like. You can script the creation of dashboards, which makes that you can run different dashboards for instance, different areas. and you can automate all of that. There's a whole tutorial about that in the platform. If you want to see an example of such a scripted dashboard in the example projects, there is actually one. Let me see if I can find it again. It's this one here. And this is an example of a scripted dashboard. And while it's loading, I'll explain you what it is. It's sort of a situational view on the status of the maritime traffic in a port. And this is now for the port of Long Beach. And you see it's updating and loading. And it reports you on the total number of ships, the total number moored, every different type moored, and so on. So you see, this would have been a very time-consuming task to create it by clicking. But this was just coded with scripting, and then we could run this for every port in the world. And we created dashboards for every port in the world like this using AIS data. I know I didn't tackle it in this tutorial, but let us know if you're interested in knowing how to do that. Then we can make another tutorial on that. So that's it for today. I also wanted to maybe see if there were questions today in the chat. I'll check that immediately. But I also want to invite you for the next training sessions. We have one on advanced filtering April 3, and we also have one on trend analytics on May 8. Just scan the codes and subscribe, or otherwise send us an email if you have difficulties doing that. I'm checking the chat. I don't see any questions for now. I'll wait a few seconds to see if there are some questions coming in. And otherwise, I would really like to thank you for using our platform. It's really our pleasure to see that we can do useful things together. There is a question. Where do you define periods? Okay, that's a very good question. And I realize I didn't talk this through in detail. So where do you define periods? So indeed, the XYZT platform, and I'm going to switch back maybe to the first example that I was using with the maritime traffic. The XYZT platform is temporal in all places. So temporal filtering and temporal periods, they are on every analytical page, you have to define them. On this page, you can do it interactively, like with a map, by zooming in and out. And then you see the period here. So those left line, the date, the time date at the bottom, and the time date at the bottom, that's the period that you define. Now, this is, of course, mostly useful when you are interactively analyzing. So if you really want to have a very specific period, the easiest thing to do here is to click this button. And there you can really set a very specific date, and there's a date time picker as well if you want to use that. What I didn't talk about, and I think it's very relevant for the dashboarding, is that you can also work with relative times. So you can say before end of data and before end of period. And you see, if I put this to 0 and this to 1, you see that I'm looking at the last day of data. And if you then create a widget, for instance, if I would put this widget on a dashboard, then it is reporting on the number of vessels on the last day. If you would then upload new data through the API or by dropping new data, the dashboard will automatically update and report on the last date. So this is where you define the periods. On the other pages, the UI is sometimes in a different place, but it will always look the same. It's always like a time range, either absolute times or relative times compared to the beginning or the end of the data. I think there was a question around the recording, whether it will be shared, and yes, we will share the recording and we will make it available. So if there are no more questions, then let me end with thanking you and feel free to reach out. My name is Bart. My email is bart@xyzt.ai, but you can also send an email to info@xyzt.ai. So with that, thank you for joining, and let's hope I see you in the next training session. Thank you.